Happy New Year. If you're joining me when I'm releasing this podcast episode live, it is Happy New Year. And if you're joining at another time of year, don't go away. Stay right where you are. Keep listening because no matter what time of year it is, I guarantee you that all of us need to hear this kind of message over and over and over again. So if you are here, you're a woman in midlife or beyond, and or you are a coach or a trainer who works with women, there is something in this episode for you. There are a couple of things that I want you to pay close attention to. I'm Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top struggles and concerns, but really most of all, I hope to inspire you. I share what to eat, how to move, and how to change your mindset. Sometimes about what you eat and how to move so that you can have the energy and the vitality that you want, need, and deserve in this second and better half. And my guest today, I'm thrilled to have, first of all, she's becoming a dear friend, even if from afar. So I don't hang out with her, not literally anyway, but I certainly hang out with her online. And I'm going to recommend that you do too. Follow her. Her messages for you getting into your brain every day will help you be a better you, love yourself better. We're talking a lot about how you talk to yourself and how important that is on a daily basis because nobody is talking to you more than you when you think about it. And what message you're sending yourself can be oh so important, whether we're talking about you reaching your consistency in health habits, your lifestyle habits that matter, your specifically exercise or nutrition habits, sleep, and what you're doing for yourself based on who you want to be in the future. We're unpacking all of it. And I'd like to call attention to a couple things that come up during this podcast. I want to have you really keep your antenna up so you're listening for the way my guest is able to acknowledge herself and compliment herself in a way that many of us would not be comfortable doing. And I have to include myself in that. I'm not sure that outwardly I could state things about myself that may in fact be true, that I may in fact believe, but that would be a little bit harder for me to speak out loud. And I want you to notice she does this. And if I don't call attention to it, I'm afraid you might gloss over the fact she did it. I brought attention back to it on the podcast. I want to make sure it's really clear why I did it. And it was for your benefit because very few of us can do that. Really acknowledging this is where I've come in my life, looking back at all the things you have done that are quite obvious often to other people, but we won't allow ourselves to think about. I often create this analogy that the closer we get to a finish line, we move it. We don't actually let ourselves get there and cross that line. We move it because I don't know. And it is self-sabotage, which often really is self-protection. There is that piece of us feeling very comfortable with the way we've always thought about ourselves and allowing ourselves to get to a different step, a different level, even a different set of framework for how we think about ourselves can be very difficult. Change is hard. This time of year, many of us are shooting for changes. And what I want you to get from this episode, if you walk away with thinking about the way you're talking to yourself now and thinking about whether the goals you've set for yourself really serve you well or not. So let's dive in to this episode. I can't wait for you to hear it. My guest today is none other than Bree Argetsinger, aka better known as the Betty Rocker. She's an internationally known health and fitness coach, innovative entrepreneur, and motivator of self-growth. Over 3 million people have taken her free 30-day Make Fat Cry home workout challenge, and hundreds of thousands more enjoy her in her online home workout studio, Rock Your Life, and with her nutrition and fitness programs and challenges. She incorporates strong holistic focus on body balancing, self-kindness, and alignment into her work, thanks to her background as a hands-on structural alignment practitioner and her training in the Czech Corrective High Performance Exercise Kinesiologist program. Hailed as a gateway to personal growth through food and fitness, she takes an accessible, all or something approach to living a healthy lifestyle of balance, and encourages women to listen to their bodies, trust themselves, and remember that flaws plus awesome equal flawsome. Bree, thanks so much for being here.
That's such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. This is such a perfect time of year to be unpacking everything that you stand for, really. And I want to commend you and applaud you and kiss your feet. You were way ahead of the curve. I think before people were really mainstream talking mindset, when we were talking fitness and getting in shape, you were there doing this from the beginning. This has always been a part of you. So I would love to know why. I mean, what's the wisdom that came before everyone else did that led you to this?
Thank you so much for that. That was so generous of you. I feel we're so aligned in the things that we teach. If I have done a good job with my coaching, it's because I've learned so much from the people who I serve and also from my own personal journey. And I would say that I was someone who pursued fitness in a really unhealthy way in my younger years before I became a coach. And I had to kind of coach myself out of those bad habits that I had. And many of my bad habits were overtraining, undereating, which many of your listeners can relate to, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. And you may also be able to relate to the one that I really identified as my biggest, messing up point, which was the constant negative self-talk. Because I grew up feeling like my worthiness came from either being pretty enough or smart enough. And those were just old messages and, outdated patterns that did not serve the dynamic, brilliant, beautiful woman that I grew into. And I was operating with bugs in my system, basically thinking wrong things and not having a very high self-esteem or a good self-perception. And I really had to do the work and continue to do the work after I started of unpacking my own negative image. And my favorite activity that I remember sort of was the turning point for me and helping me overcome my negative self-talk is I would wear a rubber band around my wrist. And when I would catch myself saying something about your nose is too lumpy or your butt is too big or you're too short or you're just ugly or you're fat or just the horrible things we say to ourselves that we would never say to our best friends or our sisters, our mothers, I would snap that rubber band. And, it's not like harmful in any way. It's just a sensation that isn't fun. And I would replace the negative thought with something positive. And that started to train my brain to think in a new way. It helped me start the reframing that I really needed to do to see myself differently and the challenges that I was facing as opportunities. And that was really a great starting point for me personally on my own journey of health, and probably the most important part of why I started to gain more balance with my training and my nutrition. And of course, as I became a coach, those things were serving me. I felt that they were essential in serving the women who I spoke to.
Okay, for listeners, you've said a lot right there, but at the very beginning, what I want to call everybody's attention to is the fact that you didn't stumble whatsoever, and you complimented yourself and kind of fully stepped into that space. And I think that is very hard for a woman to do for herself. So how'd you get to that point? Acknowledging.
I didn't stumble. I mean, this
Mm,
was a practice for
mm.
me over many years. I gave you the Cliff Notes version, but this was not like overnight success story by any means. And I think that when you're starting any practice, whether it's a mindset practice or an exercise practice, when you're building any habit into your life, we have to give ourselves grace to go about that practice. Like when you're a baby, you fall down a lot of times and you crawl before you walk. And as a baby, you're not like, I don't think I'm going to do this walking thing. I'm just going to give up and say, forget it. I'm just going to crawl the rest of my life. Right. But as adults, we kind of forget that we do have to practice things before we master them. And you're really good at walking now, aren't you? But you weren't when you started. So there's this thing with our mindset, you know, overcoming the negative self-talk to where now that feels as natural as breathing to me. It wasn't always. Now I'm really good at seeing opportunities and loving myself, but I really struggled with it for a long, long time. And there were many years where I wasn't even aware that that's what I was doing. So the first step, of course, is to become aware that you're doing something that's not serving you, or that you have habits that maybe are based on old patterns or old beliefs that are no longer serving you. So I think there's a lot of inner work that all of us can benefit from, and reflecting and seeing ourselves deeply and asking ourselves what we truly want in life, what our true vision for ourselves is, and why we care about this stuff in the first place. Because without that groundwork of why it matters to you, you won't get very far. My old why was not very supportive to me. My old why was my worth comes from how I look or how smart I am, like I shared in the beginning. I had to replace that why with something much more tangible to build healthier habits for myself. So for example, my new why of why I want to be healthy is because I picture myself at 90 as this totally autonomous woman, you know, wearing my little ballet bun on top of my head and probably some leggings. And, you know, maybe I have a cane because I like to whack things with it out of my way. Because clearly I live in the woods and I need to move trees out of my way and vines. But I just picture myself as capable and mentally there and autonomous, being able to make decisions about my life and my choices. And that's not something that I used to care about, right? I just wanted to look good in a bikini. And these right. And the byproduct, of course, of taking care of myself and being healthy in this way, I think I look great in a bikini. But you know what? I always look great in a bikini, whether I'm heavier, leaner, all of the shapes that my body takes. And as I go through time, I now trust and believe that as a healthy person, I am beautiful. So that was another piece that came later. Anyway, there's a lot.
No, and I love that. And going back to, I think this time of year, it's such a, we want this certain body, and everybody is pelted with all of these ideas from gyms and trainers and instructors and classes about having the body that you want. So I love that you lead with two things. You mentioned it's not rock your body, it's rock your life. That is your studio. So talk about that. I mean, it's directly in alignment with everything you've mentioned so far. But again, it's definitely not what most fitness businesses do. They play into what women are looking for.
I remember very early on when I taught myself how to run, ads on Facebook, my message was very well received by that company, which now is called something else. But, it's because they wanted to have an aspirational, positive message, and they were quashing a lot of messages that were so like body shaming. Thank goodness that they were doing that. So that was my truth from the beginning, was like, I don't want to be talking about bat wings or muffin tops or words that make us feel bad about ourselves, or that they're parts of our bodies that are unacceptable, because we're all of us always a work in progress somewhere, whether it's our physical self, our emotional self, our mental self. We're always growing. We're human beings. That's what we're here to do. And the reason I called it Rock Your Life, that's my online home workout studio that you so kindly mentioned, which is the heart and soul of everything that I do and offer. It's it's the point that as women, we're multidimensional beings. We are about, when we focus on our health and taking care of ourselves, this foundation serves the rest of our life. When we're healthy, we have more access to our mind capabilities. We have more clarity in our thought. We have better energy. I don't just teach exercise. I teach the 4 pillars of health, right? So I talk about sleep, nutrition, stress management, and exercise. These are 4 things that every excellent doctor I've talked to, every functional medicine practitioner who you and I know many of these wonderful people, all of these experts, they're looking for a two-way street with their patients, because there are things that we as humans need to take personal responsibility for so that any treatment that is beyond what we're capable of works better, right? So as we go through time, we're going to come across injuries, setbacks, illnesses. And if we're not doing our part to build that resilience into our bodies and into our lives through the actions we take with our health choices, we may get to a point where we realize we don't really have much of a health savings account in our body. We haven't made deposits in that health savings account, so there's not much to withdraw from. And so we get sick, we stay sick longer, we don't have the capacity to heal, we maybe don't age as well or as gracefully as we'd like to with our capability intact. So these are all the things I think about with life satisfaction and the big picture of rocking at life, is like, what are the practices that you're willing to take on? And it's not just about exercise. We're really focused on that because we've been taught to focus on the body, the body, the body. And it is about the body, but the body needs you to love it and to balance out the things that you're doing to train it, train your mind, train your body. And there are many ways to do that, not just with exercise.
Fits right in with your tagline, and you may not call it that, but I just did. Why it's all or something, not all or nothing.
Yeah, that's such an important tagline. I remember the day that I thought of that and said it out loud. I think I was on a Facebook Live, and I was just like thinking about how one of the things that really grinds my gears in the fitness industry is this all or nothing mentality, like no days off, and these like 30-day push-up challenges, and like these things where you're just like going
45.
nonstop. Yeah, like stuff that is just, and side note, why I don't like a 30 or 45-day push-up challenge is because most of us are already overdeveloped in the front side of our body, and we need posterior chain training. So it's awesome to work on your push-ups, but work on your posterior chain for 30 days straight and tell me like how much better your posture is. So back to our original all or something point, which it's just the most important thing to remember, because you're always making progress when you stay focused on your 4 pillars of health. And the reason they're 4 pillars is because I had this idea of you're sitting on a chair, your throne, basically. You're sitting on your fitness and health throne, and you have 4 legs of a chair. And think about it. Your chair can balance with one of those legs gone, or even 2 sometimes. Like you can still balance on the chair with 1 or 2 of the legs gone, because we all go through times in life where we can't get good sleep, right? Sleep's my top pillar. And if you've had kids or you've gone through death experience, you've had there's all these things that happen in life unexpectedly that just make it so you can't get good sleep. Well, you still focus on your other 3 pillars and you're okay, right? 2 pillars could go out and you just really focus on 2 of them and you're still going to be okay. Like all or something is about doing what you can with what you have. A lot of women get really stressed out because they're like, well, I can't do a 30-minute workout, and you made a 30-minute workout. And I'm like, do half of it. What can you do? Like, what do you have time for? Get it done, do what you can and know that it counts. It's not like it doesn't count if you didn't ever. And the thing about no days off, which really bugs me, which was the example I was making about the push-up challenge, is that your body needs rest in order to grow muscle, in order to recover fully so that you can hit your next workout. And that's something that becomes even more important in peri and post menopause, of course, right? We need that very, very much that polarization in our training. We need full recovery, and then we can hit it hard again in order to really stimulate muscle protein synthesis, and in order to really get the result. We want that high intensity, and then we want to rest. We want to make sure that we're taking those breaks and not going hard every single day, because eventually you burn out. and you get into like what Dr. Sims calls the gray zone, which is really detrimental to your health and will increase your cortisol levels, which adds belly fat and body fat storage. So it's all part of that all or something mentality that I love.
So love that. And such a good time of year again to mention that. And somebody listening out there is probably in this 30 days, no day off kind of challenge. Hopefully you slip your own recovery day in there, here and there, and not necessarily pushing through. That's not necessarily the faster way to fitness, actually. So you'll end up sidelined. I would love to touch a little bit more on, you kind of broach the subject of perimenopause and menopause and how things change there. So I will confess, so I'm post-menopause, so just a couple years. So talk a little bit about when you started to where you are now, how your own personal training program has changed in order to kind of meet the needs of where you are hormonally.
Thanks for that. And I just want to say that I don't feel like you should feel like you have to confess that you're post-menopause. I feel that you should declare it loud and proud because, bravo. And
Right.
I said this before, just about how, to you personally, that I feel like menopause is this powerful transition. It's this wonderful, it's a transition in a woman's life that I feel like a lot of us dread. And I think we should reclaim the experience and just remember you're adding another notch to your belt. You're entering into a new realm of possibility for yourself. And as research on women in fitness specifically becomes more and more out there, as opposed to just research done on men, which many of us have based all of our training on for many years, it's really exciting. It's an exciting time for women. And it's an exciting time to be in peri and postmenopause because now we know better how to support the body if we want to reach a goal of continuing to add muscle to our frame or to lose body fat or to do some of those things that are really common that make us feel really strong and healthy, right? And there's nothing wrong with having these aesthetic goals. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be strong and fit. There's nothing wrong with wanting to feel sexy and beautiful. These are all just aspects of life. They're just not the only part of life, right? That's, I think, my point. But my personal journey, for sure, I really struggled. I mentioned that I had a lot of challenges with the way that I trained and the way that I ate when I was younger. And that was a lot to do in my 20s. And by the time I got to my 30s, because I overtrained so much, I really burned out my adrenals. And I really struggled. I started struggling with hormone balance very early in life. I was on the pill for 14 years, kind of got off it cold turkey, had a lot of challenges hormonally, and also struggled with adrenal fatigue in my early 30s and went through all kinds of different, health strategies to get back on track with my hormones. And I got to a really good, healthy place. And a lot of that had to do with the work I did on learning to meditate, on learning to manage my stress, right? Because that was kind of what was running me for a long time. And when I got to my early 40s, I was in a great spot. I think like right now I'm 45, and looking back over the last 5 years since I hit 40, I went from being sort of in my peak in every way to gaining a lot of body fat and losing muscle. And I thought I was experiencing early perimenopause when this started to occur. And it turns out that I had been exposed to mold. And I really didn't know for the first year that that's what it was. And at the time I moved to Florida briefly for some business reasons. And I sadly was living in a house that was just had a ton of this in the house. And the house ended up, it was just so sad. It's a beautiful house, but it would just get waterlogged. And that area of Florida is Florida in general can get a lot of rain. And I just didn't know what these symptoms were coming from. I had brain fog. My cycle started to get really erratic. So it was having this cascading effect into my hormones, which up until then had been rock solid for quite some time. And so I actually moved back to Colorado for personal reasons. And thank goodness I did, because I removed myself from the exposure. I learned that I had been exposed to mold through a test that my functional medicine doctor ran. And I started treatment. I started your body has its own detox pathways. That's why I get a little irritated by all of the detox this, detox that. I'm like, your body is really amazing and capable of detoxing for itself. However, at some time, it has a set capacity for what it can do in a day and what it can do. And sometimes you just get overloaded. Maybe you've already got some underlying inflammation in your system that you're not even aware of. And then you get an additional burden on top of it. I think this is sort of why some people get sick or get a lot sicker when they're exposed to a certain virus, or they get exposed to any kind of condition. You don't know what you don't know, right? What's going on inside of you. And not all of us, if we're feeling okay, we don't go get tests and find out where's everything at, because we feel okay. But because our amazing, powerful body is constantly capable of, filtering out and dealing with inflammation and dealing with toxic stuff in our system. So at any rate, I got to that stage where I started to go through the detox process. And one of the things about mold is that, it is storing a lot of stuff in your fat cells. And as I was going through this process, at first I was really frustrated because I didn't understand why it was happening. And I didn't have the information. Why is my body changing? And I have no control over it changing back to the way it was. And I think that was really important for me to go through, because in many times in my life, my body has changed throughout the course of the year. I talk about this a lot with my own audience about how it's natural and healthy if you fluctuate up and down in weight throughout the year. If your body fat goes up and down, there's nowhere that says you're supposed to be super lean all the time. You're telling yourself that, right? The magazines are telling you that. Instagram is telling you that. And it's not true. It's a lie. And it's also not super healthy for your body. It's good to have cycles. It's great to work on a goal for a period of time, hit it, enjoy it, then taper off, give your body a break, do something else. So I had been really happily shifting up and down in weight for years at this point. And this time was different because I gained this weight and I couldn't lose it when I tried. None of my regular strategies are working. And I thought at one point, maybe I should eat less and exercise more. Maybe that will help, because that's that's our default programming, the dogma. Yeah. And I didn't go into that trap. Thank goodness. I talked myself off that shelf. And what I just really, what I came to realize as I went through this process was whatever is happening in your body, first and foremost, try to find out, get the data, find out what's happening. Once I understood that it was mold and I understood what my body needed to do to deal with that, I just got on board with the process. And you guys may have seen me sharing pictures of my stomach puffed out versus when I sucked it in. And because my body had changed, and I just wanted to show that I'm still the same person, because I felt like the same person, because internally I became a real ally with myself. And that really helped me with the healing process too. And because I could have just been in resistance to it and been mad about myself and been all stressed out constantly about how my body had changed. And remember earlier, I talked a little bit about the deposits we make in our health savings account. I had been making deposits in my health savings account for years when this happened. So physically to you, externally, I might not look that much different, but to myself, I could certainly see the changes. And when I got body scans, I could see quite a substantial increase in body fat and quite a substantial decrease in muscle tissue, which was, of course, concerning because I want to preserve muscle as I age. I want to be strong and capable. But what's been so wonderful about the whole experience, and I think this is going to really serve me once I go through menopause myself, because the body may change. You may experience an illness like I did. You may go through something where you feel out of control. And that's a scary thing. So I encourage you, if you feel out of control and your body is changing, that first and foremost, you get some data, you get some blood work, you look and see what's actually going on in there so that you can at least sleep at night knowing what it is. And then you consider getting on board and becoming an ally with your own body and learn as much as you can about what you can do to support the process of your own healing. And keep in mind that if you look a little bit different, maybe it's temporary, maybe it's not, but it's okay. You're still awesome and remember you're flawsome too. Like that's part of it. So that's a little bit more about what I went through in that journey.
So good. And we both, neither one of us signed up for that, but I also went through exposure to mold, and mine occurred the very same year that I actually hit menopause.
Oh my
So it
gosh.
was kind of like 6 months leading up to it. And then I was in menopause. And ironically, I had decided to go for one of those, life events where bucket list, and I wanted to train for one more Ironman and do that in Cozumel. So I was going through like one and then the next, and I was already in this training and committed, and mentally I wanted to do it, but I could tell it was not the same experience. My body wasn't reacting the way it had prior. And it wasn't the 12 to 14 pounds of weight gain that bothered me as much as I did not feel like myself. It's when your habits change. You wake up in the morning as a morning person and you're not firing on all cylinders, and those changes that come. And I think that's when you really want to take the best assessment and step back and look at what is really going on here. And applause to you. And I want to point out we have a lot of listeners who I know are fitness trainers and health coaches, that I think it's easy to feel a little imposter syndrome. If you have the limiting belief, and I think it is our own limiting belief, that we have to look a certain way in order to be effective at our job, teaching fitness or teaching health habits. And suddenly you realize, well, wait, I still have all the knowledge. I still have all the heart-centered, intention for people. You haven't lost that. So I think you were a great role model in that. And I know for me it was a little challenging to go through. And then I realized really what I need to do here is just be totally transparent that we're not immune. We are going to fluctuate. We're going to be, go through life changes or emotions or whatever it might be, and share how I'm dealing with it and getting through it. I think that's a big part of my healing, was maybe just opening up and not keeping it closed or a secret, and just suffering myself.
Yeah, that's it's a lot to carry, these weighty perceptions we have of how we're supposed to present ourselves to the world and to others. And there are clearly expectations we have of ourselves and that we have of other people, of how they're supposed to look and how they're supposed to be. And I think it's a really great opportunity to question that. If you're hearing this and you're thinking about these things, question all of those assumptions and those expectations, that you have of yourself and of other people. And I want to say that for me, I was like you. Initially, I was so tired. I didn't have the energy to put out, to talk about much of anything about it. I just wanted to get through the day and do my work as best I could. And once I started to feel better, and I felt like I guess I felt like if I wanted to share about the mold journey, I also wanted to share that with light at the end of the tunnel for others who might be experiencing it. And so I did choose my moment of when to start talking about my journey and my experience. It was when I started to feel better, both for personal reasons to protect my own energy around it, and also to, again, I always want to serve all of you, and I want to be able to show you by my own example, but I don't want to just like leave you hanging or bring you into the midst of a firestorm that I'm trying to personally deal with. I don't think that's responsible as a trainer personally. And I think we do need a certain amount of energy to be able to talk about things. And it's a personal choice of when and how you share anything. And if you're a trainer listening or coach or someone who serves others, it's always your choice. You don't have to do what I did or what Deborah did or what anybody else did. It's always your choice. But I do think it does benefit a lot of people when you're able to share from an empowered place what you're dealing with, especially if you feel like you have the energy to walk through it and you're able to model some healthy behavior that could help others. But I do think we have a responsibility to share when we're ready and from a place that can serve, and not just from a place of, look at me, I'm hurting. That's why I didn't share in the beginning. I didn't know how to talk about it at first because I was tired. My brain wasn't working right. Like I didn't have energy, like all the things you said. I mean, it was hard at first.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally understand that. Okay. I would love to do this in our last couple of minutes as we wrap up. This time of year, so easily we've talked around, we've talked through, what everyone is subjected to, or those messages of perfection and resolutions and new goals. And you've mentioned so many times self talk. And so if you could give, one or two tips about how to, first of all, maybe become aware of the messages you're sending to yourself and how listeners could begin to turn that around with the kind of kindness and generosity that they might show to somebody else. What are some tangible steps someone could take?
I think that I would invite you to picture your best friend in your mind, your sister or your mom, someone you really, really love and admire and think is just so cool. And I want you to imagine that she is coming to you with a story about how much she sucks at fill in the blank. What is something that she is not doing very well right now? She's just coming to you and she is dumping on you all this stuff that is just not working for her. She's telling you how she doesn't like how she looks. She's telling you she doesn't like how much she weighs. She's telling you she didn't do enough around the holidays for her family. She's telling you she just is a failure at life. And I want you to picture the advice and the way that you would handle that if she brought those concerns to you and those things to you. And I want you to give her advice in your mind and give her love and give her kindness. And I'm sure you're smart and know exactly where I'm going with this. I just want you to think about how could you say those things to yourself? Because the people that you love the most are really a reflection of you. They are you just embodied in another being. And we're attracted to specific people because we have an affinity for them because of who we are. And so when someone is suffering and comes to you, you'd greet them with generosity, love, kindness. Your big, beautiful heart just opens up to them. Give that gift back to yourself always, every day. Picture if you're struggling with how to be aware or how to say nice things to yourself, think of the nice things that you would say to your best friend or to someone you really love and say them to yourself. Write them down. Write love notes for your friends and give them to yourself. Read them out loud, looking in the mirror. I think that's kind of like that's just one fun way that you can do it. And the other way was what I said earlier. If you want to try my rubber band snap on your wrist, and it shouldn't really hurt you. It's just a physical association that you're making intentionally with a negative thought towards yourself that you then change and replace with something positive. And that really worked for me. Different things are going to work for different people. That worked for me as a start point. That was just so awesome. And, most of us have a rubber band or a hair tie we can wear around our wrists. So those are my tips for you, Deb.
Love it. Thank you so much. You are everywhere at The Betty Rocker, and we're going to put all the links for people to follow you because you've got so much wisdom and so much goodness around all the things, starting above the shoulders and going below the shoulders, and great inspiration every day. If there was one more question that I didn't ask you that I should have, what would that be?
Ask me to define flawsome.
Define flawsome, please.
This is for all of you amazing people out there. You can be awesome and you can be flawed all at the same time. You are every day all of the things, and don't expect yourself to be perfect because no one ever is. Flowers are perfect. The ocean is perfect. Nature is perfect. We live in nature. We are slightly flawed, and we are also have amazing capacity to be awesome. So remember, you're flawsome every day.
Thank you so much. Okay, listeners. So if there is a question that I should have asked Bree that I did not, that you wish I would have asked, You can leave that below the show notes at flipping50.com/The Betty Rocker. And what are you waiting for? Let's start flipping 50 today.